Why are we withering away amidst our own cleverness? I wonder if you have ever experienced a moment like this. I did everything right, absolutely everything Faye. So why do I still feel so miserable? Our generation was compelled from childhood to excel. We excel at solving problems, at mapping out career paths, at winning over clients, and even at deploying various psychological tools to manage our partners and children. We have sliced our lives into a series of KPIs and to-do lists. Within this system of doing, we have evolved to the absolute pinnacle of efficiency. But what of the Faye texture, Faye of life itself? Why is it that, amidst all our cleverness, we are withering away? This is precisely why I want to talk to you today about this book. Faye Life is But One Thing Faye by Mr. Chin-Wei Chun. To be honest, when I first saw the title, my mind was filled with arrogance and resistance. In an era as incredibly complex as ours, one rife with uncertainty and systemic risk, you're telling me that life is but one thing. Isn't that just some cheap, self-help chicken soup for the soul? But when I actually opened the book and reached the halfway mark, I'd realized that the entire logic of my past life, that fortress built upon problem, solving and conquering everything, had been effortlessly shattered by his words. Mr. Chin-Wei Chun isn't teaching us how to do things, rather, drawing upon a lifetime of experience that saw him scale the highest peaks only to crash back down to earth. He reveals to us a brutally honest truth. All the suffering, internal conflict and helplessness we experience in this life stem from the fact that we are playing a game we are destined to lose. A game in which we attempt to use the logic of doing to mask the festering wound of not knowing how to live today. I don't intend merely to summarize this book for you. Instead, I invite you to pause with me, silence your phone, pour yourself a cup of hot tea, and let us turn our gaze toward that battered, wounded self we have kept imprisoned deep within us for so long. The first concept we will explore, the very starting point that reshaped my worldview throughout this book, is what I call faith, illusion of problems, and the boundaries of perception. Faye. Mr. Chin-Wei Chun possesses an incredibly illustrious past. He is the founder of Faye Business Weekly Faye in Taiwan. At the pinnacle of his life, he wielded immense power and wealth. He was not merely a successful businessman, but an opinion leader who held sway over the very direction of society. In his own words, every day he taught others how to get things done, teaching the government how to govern, and businesses how to turn a profit. Then, one day, his enterprise plunged into a desperate crisis. Teetering on the brink of bankruptcy, his health flashed red warning signals, and his family relationships plummeted to a freezing point. He suddenly found himself besieged by a myriad of problems: financial woes, issues with employee competence, a lack of understanding from his wife, and rebellion from his children. So, he reached for his most formidable weapon: problem solving. He convened more meetings, instituted stricter regulations, and employed even sharper rhetoric to dissect the flaws of his family members. The result, far from improving, the situation only accelerated its descent into the abyss. The book contains a metaphor that is incredibly vivid. It suggests that our lives are like a wooden boat sailing across a vast open ocean. When the hull springs a leak, the first, and often the only instinct for the vast majority of us is to grab a bucket and frantically bail out the water. This act of bailing water is precisely what we call problem solving. The faster we bail, the more capable and efficient we feel. But what about the hole itself? the whole caused by rotting timber and structural distortion. We turn a blind eye to it. We simply continue bailing, day after day, until we are utterly exhausted, until we are finally swallowed up by the sea. Upon reaching this point in the text, I've wanted to pause and share a view of my own reflections with you. In this image of bailing water, I see a reflection of myself and a microcosm of countless modern people. In the workplace, we frantically study communication techniques to bail out the water of interpersonal conflict. In our intimate relationships, we learn about emotional value to bail out the water of a partner's indifference. We delude ourselves into believing that if we simply master enough methodologies, we can repair the battered vessel of our lives. How everything falls apart, and as we push this logic to its extreme conclusion, we uncover a terrifying truth. The greater your capabilities, the greater the catastrophe you may inadvertently create. For you are so adept at getting things done that, through this veneer of efficiency, you effectively mask the gaping holes and deep-seated decay at the very foundation of your life. Jin Weishan suddenly experienced a moment of epiphany. The problems plaguing his company were not issues of management. The problems plaguing his family were not issues of communication. Out of it, every single bit, stemmed from one solitary source. He himself was the problem. He was too conceited, too arrogant, and too obsessed with proving that he was right. He was the epicenter from which all this chaos radiated. Unless he fundamentally transformed the very essence of who he was, any effort expended on merely fixing the issues at hand would amount to nothing more than slapping an exquisitely crafted bandage onto a terminal illness. This, then, is the true essence of the book's title. Fei Leaf is but one thing Fei. Life is not a series of thousands of separate tasks requiring your attention. Life consists of only one thing. How do you choose to live? Everything falls apart. Marriage, parenting, is merely a natural reflection of your inner state of being. They are mere byproducts. If you are right, if your inner self is aligned, then everything falls apart into place. But if you are twisted, if your inner self is askew, then everything you do, no matter how sophisticated the techniques you employ, will ultimately end in ruin. We are forever attempting to use tactical diligence to mask a fundamental existential collapse. Yet we forget that life is not a calculus problem to be solved, but rather a patch of soil in which one must take deep root. If the soil itself is tainted, then no matter how many lush, vibrant branches you prune into shape above it, the result will be nothing more than a magnificent, drawn-out withering. If the first chapter served to strip away our illusions, then the second chapter sees the author wielding a rusty scalpel to lance the festering abscess of our ego. The theme of this chapter is admitting fault. Please note, the admitting fault I speak of here is by no means the perfunctory workplace apology. My apologies, that was my mistake. Nor is it the childish plea uttered solely to evade punishment. Mommy, I was wrong. The admitting fault described by Jin Weishan is a counter-intuitive ego-shattering act of existential reconstruction, a dismantling of one's very mechanisms of self-defense. When his company teetered on the brink of collapse, he did something that left everyone utterly dumbfounded. He did not seek out loans, nor did he initiate layoffs. Instead, he summoned all of his key executives to his office, closed the door, and began to speak. Then, this founder, on so high and mighty and imperious, bowed his head. He began to admit his faults to his employees. He wasn't engaging in crisis PR. He was tearing off his mask of vanity with sheer, raw force. He admitted his arrogance, his incompetence, the foolish decisions he had made merely to save face, and his utter failure to understand how to care for his staff. He wept like a child. And then, a miracle occurred. Those employees, who had grown disheartened and were on the verge of quitting, were profoundly moved by this unreserved sincerity. In that moment, their collective spirit was rekindled. The company was ultimately brought back from the brink of collapse. He arrived at a conclusion. 1,000 mistakes, 10,000 mistakes, they are all my fault. Only when you accept 100% responsibility for everything that happens in your life can your life truly undergo a transformation. However, I must admit quite frankly that when I reached this point in the text, I personally did not fully agree with the author's perspective. Or rather, I regarded this particular viewpoint with extreme caution. Is it really true? 1,000 mistakes? 10,000 mistakes? They are all my fault. If a young woman faces injustice and bullying in the workplace, is that her fault too? If a person is ruthlessly exploited, bled dry, by their parents within their own family, is that also their fault? If we were to accept this philosophy wholesale, would it not morph into the ultimate form of victim blaming, a manipulative form of psychological control, pooked in the guise of philosophy? I paused at this chapter, mulling over and scrutinizing it again and again. I even engaged in countless fierce internal debates with the author in my mind. It was not until I stepped outside the context of moral judgment and shifted my perspective to that of energetic evolution that I suddenly grasped what he was truly trying to convey. What Jin Wei Shun refers to as admitting one's faults has absolutely nothing to do with debating moral rights and wrongs. Rather, he is discussing who holds the reins of control over one's life. When we cast the blame for our problems onto external factors, saying, "The market environment is poor," "My husband is too selfish," or "My boss is an idiot," in that very instant, we experience a sense of psychological relief, for we have absolved ourselves of any responsibility. Yet, this is an extremely short-sighted form of gratification, a fleeting relief akin to drinking poison to quench one's thirst. For when you believe the fault lies with others, it implies that your destiny has been surrendered into the hands of that offending party. Since the error is theirs, you are left with no choice but to wait for faithum fay to change before your own situation can improve. You have reduced yourself to a helpless victim, a prisoner condemned to stand still, waiting for others to bestow their favors upon you. Thus, Jin Wei Chun's act of taking the blame is, in essence, a reclamation of power. Although external factors contributed to all of this, within this system, was there a step I could have taken better? Did I, in some way, tacitly enable this to happen? Did I, driven by some personal fixation or stubbornness, place myself in this predicament? When you take a deep breath and declare, "I am the source of all this," you are not punishing yourself. You are proclaiming to the entire universe, "From this moment forward, I am no longer a passive object, merely enduring what comes my way. I am the sole master of my own destiny." It is a deeply wrenching process, for you must personally shatter that glass dome labeled, "I am the wronged party," or "I am always right." Yet, this is precisely the indispensable path for the evolution of the human spirit. Admitting one's mistakes is not a humiliating act of kneeling, but rather a profoundly powerful stance of standing tall. For those who perpetually believe themselves to be right are, in truth, trapped within the towering walls of perfection they themselves have erected. Oddly, those who dare to break apart can, from the very sight of their wounds, forge the hardened armor needed to withstand the vicissitudes of life. If taking the blame serves as the first key to unraveling life's intractable knots, then the word we are about to discuss next is the core code that determines the fundamental tone of our lives, whether it will be one of gloom or of brilliance. That word is willingness. Before reading this book, I had long felt that within the modern lexicon of our era, one word has been excessively romanticized: endurance. Or, as it is often phrased, gritting one's teeth and holding on. From childhood, we are indoctrinated with the maxim, "He who endures the bitterest hardships shall rise to stand above all others." Consequently, we have turned our lives into one long, drawn-out ordeal. To keep up with mortgage payments, we drag ourselves to our loathsome jobs every day with a frown. This is called endurance. To avoid divorce, we suppress our inner rage and continue living with our partners. This, too, is called endurance. To ensure our children get into good schools, we sacrifice our weekends to supervise their studies, shouting at them while tutoring them through their homework. And this, as well, is called endurance. We view ourselves as incredibly noble, tragic heroes making sacrifices for the sake of life itself. However, Jin Weishan incisively points out the hypocrisy and destructive nature of this mindset. He argues that anything built upon a foundation of reluctance and endurance will eventually manifest in a twisted form, demanding compensation from the people around it. There is a particularly intriguing detail here. Mr. Jin notes that many parents pour immense effort and money into their children, even sacrificing their own careers. Yet their children end up deeply miserable, sometimes even suffering from depression. Why? Because beneath the parents' outward acts of giving lies a silent subtext: "I have sacrificed so much for you. Therefore, you must obey me, and you must excel." This so-called love is, in reality, an incredibly heavy debt. One bristling with sharp thorns. What the child receives is not nourishment, but suffocation. This reminds me of an experience I once had. For a period, I was under immense work pressure, staying up late every night to write. One day, my partner asked me to help make dinner. Although I agreed, as I chopped the vegetables, I pounded the cutting board with earth-shattering force. While cooking, I raged inwardly. I'm already so exhausted. Why am I still expected to cook? Can't you show me a little consideration? When the meal was finally served, the food itself tasted fine, but the atmosphere at the table was glacial. My partner ate tentatively, and eventually, out of simmering tensions erupted into a full-blown argument. You see, I got the Fey task done, but I ruined the Fey relationship because I lacked willingness. Jin Weishan says that willingness is an incredibly powerful form of magic. It is not about forcing yourself to like things you detest. Rather, it is a wholehearted embrace, one you offer unreservedly after having clearly recognized and accepted reality. Since I have decided to cook this meal, since I have decided to continue in this job, since I have decided to bring this child into the world, then I shall cast aside every notion of "I have to," or "why should I?" I will chop everything in, with a heart filled with 100% joy. I will if you cannot bring yourself to be willing, then do not do it at all. But if you do undertake it, then completely let go of your ego and do so wholeheartedly and willingly. For endurance, gritting your teeth and bearing it, depletes your vital energy. It hardens your countenance into a look of bitterness and leaves your inner self hollow. Willingness, however, transforms that vital energy. When you are truly willing, the very burdens that once tormented you become the sculptor's tools that carve and refine your soul. The true quality of your life is determined by how many moments each day you spend in that state of I am willing. We often use a sense of sacrifice to trumpet our own greatness. Yet we fail to realize that giving with a heart full of resentment is the most potent poison in the world. True love and strength are never born of clenched-jawed endurance. Rather, they emerge in that singular moment when, with a smile, you offer your unreserved I am willing to all of life's rough edges and vexations. If we follow this logic of willingness to its natural conclusion, we inevitably run headlong into a massive wall. That wall is called intimate relationships. Of the entire book, the chapter that moved me most deeply and filled me with the greatest sense of shame was Jin Weichen's incisive analysis of how we treat those closest to us. In the wider world, in society and in the workplace, we typically present ourselves as reasonable, emotionally intelligent, and refined. We know how to respect our clients, how to listen to our bosses, and how to show consideration for our subordinates. Yet, the moment we return home, close the door behind us, and face our most intimate partners, parents, and children, we instantly transform into tyrants. Why? Because we view them as our own people. But Mr. Jin offers an even more chilling explanation. The reason we treat those closest to us so poorly is that, deep down in our subconscious, we do not actually regard them as independent human beings. We have come to view them as mere accessories to our lives, as extensions of our own selves, and as tools to satisfy our need for security. If you treat your partner as a tool, and that tool fails to function according to your wishes, it is only natural that you would feel anger. You would treat them much like a glitchy mobile phone, tapping at it, attempting to reboot it, and striving to fix it. Why are you so lazy? Why can't you just be like other people's husbands or wives? How many times have I told you this? Why won't you ever change? Do these words sound incredibly familiar? At this moment, I would like to invite you all to take a deep breath, close your eyes, and reflect. How long has it been since we last gazed upon the person lying beside us with that same sense of awe reserved for a stranger? In his book, Jin Weichen writes about his mother. Throughout his entire life, he was in constant conflict with her, perceiving her as overly domineering and unreasonable. He marshaled every sophisticated argument at his disposal to refute her, attempting to mold her into someone else. It was not until his mother's final years, as she lay in her hospital bed, that he suddenly came to a realization of a profoundly sorrowful truth. His mother had lived a life devoid of formal education, enduring countless hardships. She possessed only the most meager, and at times, even distorted, and yet, he, a social elite, well-versed in literature and traveling the globe to deliver speeches, had spent all that time using the sharp blade of logic to lacerate the heart of a frail, elderly woman in the twilight of her life. He was not truly loving his mother. He was merely trying to prove that Fei Hifei was right. Upon his awakening, Jin Wei-chin let go of all his arguments. He no longer corrected his mother. Instead, he simply held her hand and listened as she repeated the same old nagging refrains she had uttered countless times before. In that moment, he finally shifted his focus from solving problems within the relationship back to simply experiencing his mother as a human being. This realization struck me with profound force. In intimate relationships, insisting on being right or relying solely on logic is a form of violence, albeit a highly insidious, for logic is cold and clinical, whereas human beings are warm, fragile creatures, brimming with irrational fears. When you attempt to employ a logical framework to prove that the other person is wrong and you are right, you are, in essence, declaring to them, I do not care about your feelings. I do not care about your fear. All I care about is ensuring that, in this power struggle, Fei emerge as the winner. But what kind of victory is it to win the argument yet lose the person? True intimacy is not about two people molding one another into perfect gears that interlock without a single gap. Rather, true intimacy involves two imperfect souls willing to lay down their weapons and cease their attempts to fix one another. It is an act of seeing. It is looking into the other person's eyes and saying, I see your fears. I see your awkwardness. I no longer demand that you be perfect. I simply wish to walk alongside you for a while in this imperfect world. We are forever deluding ourselves into believing we can play the role of the omniscient, omnipotent judge within our relationships, using the ruler of logic to measure the depths of our emotions. Yet, the closed loop of logic can never fully encompass the variegated, textured nature of life itself. Love is not a project of reconstruction. Love is a gaze filled with compassion. If we have indeed seen through the illusion of problems, if we have reclaimed the reins of our own lives, and if we have learned the power of willingness, while letting go of the urge to mold those around us, then, when we return to the reality of everyday life, how exactly should we Fei? The final answer Jin Wei-chin offered was so simple and unadorned that it bordered on the profound. He said, treat the small things as if they were the big things. After experiencing the full spectrum of worldly splendor and ruin, Mr. Jin, in his later years, began to cultivate an attentiveness to the most minute details of life. For instance, how to truly listen when someone speaks a sentence, how to properly align one's shoes, how to wash a single bowl with full awareness, or even how to simply breathe properly. When I first read this passage, a flicker of doubt crossed my mind. Was this merely a regression into that form of escapist nihilism? Retreating into the sanctuary of one's home to wash dishes in search of inner peace, simply because one could no longer keep up with the relentless grind of the outside world? No, it was not. I pondered this deeply and repeatedly, until I finally attempted to put it into practice in my own life. I discovered that, far from being an act of escapism, this approach dealt a fatal blow to that peculiar anxiety plaguing modern people, the perpetual sense of always being somewhere else. We are constantly held hostage by grand narratives. We tell ourselves we must change the world. We must achieve financial freedom. We must secure a perfect future for our children. Our eyes remain perpetually fixed upon some elusive goal, situated 5 or 10 years down the road. But what is the result? In pursuit of that illusory future, we blithely, and even self-righteously, squander every single present moment. We check our work chat groups on our phones while we eat. We play with our children while our minds remain preoccupied with tomorrow's mortgage payment. We travel to distant lands, Yet our thoughts are still consumed by how to curate the perfect social media post. We resemble ghosts in perpetual motion. Our physical bodies move through this material world. Yet our souls never truly land. We have never truly savored the taste of a single mouthful of food. Nor have we ever truly discerned the intricate veins of a single leaf. Washing dishes is simply washing dishes. Hidden behind this Zen aphorism lies life's most profound mystery. When you focus all your attention, all your energy, upon the single-minute task right before your eyes, time ceases to flow, and space ceases to fold in upon itself. In that moment, you are no longer an anxious father, no longer a weary employee, no longer a victim burdened by a heavy past. You are simply the one washing the dishes. You merge, becoming one, with the bowl and with the flowing water. This is precisely what Chin-Wei Chun meant when he said that life consists of only one thing, living well in every here and now. So-called grand endeavors, those feats deemed earth-shattering, are nothing more than mirages or insatiable black holes of desire. If they are detached from the groundedness and focus of the present second, greatness is never defined by the execution of a single monumental task. Rather, greatness lies in approaching every minute task with a sense of profound reverence. By perfecting each small detail to the absolute limit, the very substance of your life, much like a pyramid, will be built upon an unshakable foundation. Through the pages of Fey Life has only one task, Fey. We have embarked upon a journey of inward stripping, a process of peeling back the layers of the self. Out of everything falls avoidance guide, ne'er have I price. Ne'er have I provided any instant, actionable tips promising immediate results, for I believe that each of you here is already intelligent enough. Already possesses the know how to simply get things done. Yet, as I stated at the outset, this book is not intended to make us sharper. Rather, it is meant to make us deeper and more substantial. Since finishing this book, my attitude toward life has undergone a transformation. One that is subtle, yet profoundly significant. I no longer fear problems quite so much. When life once again dumps a chaotic mess right in front of me. When the words won't flow for a manuscript. When a partner breaches a contract. Or when my spouse vents their frustrations at me. I no longer react as I used to. Tensing up instantly. Drawing my sword and rushing to slay these problems. Instead, I pause silently within myself for 3 seconds. I look at these problems as if gazing at a reflection on the surface of water, and I say to myself, this is merely a mirror. It serves as a reminder that somewhere within my life, I have once again drifted off course. Then, I sheathed my sword. I began to look inward. I tried to admit my faults. I tried to replace the poison of endurance with the energy of willingness. And I tried to view the person currently lashing out at me not as a problem to be solved, but as a wounded soul. I dare not claim that I have fully succeeded. It is incredibly difficult. It runs counter to the animal instincts we have spent millions of years evolving. Yet, I am certain that I am walking, albeit slowly, along the right path. Life is much like sculpting a statue of yourself in the dark. You might have once believed you were carving wealth, power, or a flawless image in the eyes of others. But as the chisel strikes and stone chips fly, you eventually discover that the form gradually emerging is, in fact, your own soul. When you live your own life well, the world around you lights up. That is everything I wanted to share with you today. As we reach the end of this video, and breaking with convention, I do not wish to offer a trite, summarizing cliché. Instead, I want to dedicate this time to you. To that inner self deep within you that may not have been truly heard for a very long time. I would like to ask you to answer a single question, either in the comments section below or simply within the quiet sanctuary of your own mind. In your life right now, is there something that causes you immense pain, or even leaves you feeling suffocated, that were you to decide right now to completely let go of judgment and say to it, without any reservation, would fundamentally transform your life? Thank you for dedicating a precious portion of your life's time to join me in this long spiritual dialogue. May we all, in this one and only life we have, truly, deeply feel it.